I remember being 16 years old with my first truck. It was a 1992 GMC Sierra 1500 with a 5-liter V8 and a 5-speed manual transmission, and one fender that didn't match the other one, a bunch of Bondo that rusted out anyway. It was great. Fun fact, by the way, I learned to drive manual transmission the day that I bought that truck. I had literally no idea what I was doing, but I knew I wanted the truck, so I found it in my price range, and I literally learned to drive manual on the way home. Can we just have a moment of silence for the clutch that I killed on the way back to my house? And much like you guys, I couldn't wait once I bought it to make my truck look sick as heck. So the first thing that I did was look at lift kits. And of course, my dad had to come in and rain on my parade by telling me all about how lifting my truck was gonna make it useless and gonna make it ride rough. And good Lord knows you'll never be able to tow anything in your life with those really low profile tires. Now, mind you, it's 2009. A 20 by 12 and a 33 was a big wheel and tire setup back then.
Well, guess what, Dad? I'm an adult now. I have adult money and I lifted my truck because I do what I want.
I'm Dustin the Custom Offsets. You guys can find me on Instagram at dusty.co, and in today's video, we're going to be going over what really happens when you lift your pickup truck. Now let's get it. Now listen, if you're looking for a lift kit for your truck, then we can probably help with that. Not only do we have a ton of different suspension products, from leveling kits all the way up to like full Kelderman air ride lift kits, but we've also created a gallery that has literally 100,000 trucks with all sorts of suspension setups, so you can actually see what that particular setup may look like on your truck without, having to go through all the work of installing a lift kit just to find out that when you put it on the ground, your truck is too big to fit out the garage door. Believe it or not, it's happened, and it probably happens more than you think. And it definitely puts guys in maybe just a little bit of a pickle from time to time. Also, while we're talking about the website, I do want to mention that we've partnered up with TIS Wheels to support the Warrior Built Foundation. That's why you see this great Warrior Built Foundation t-shirt I got on. It's an awesome group of guys who work with veterans and get them into recreational therapy like building custom motorcycles, and give them a space to talk to one another so they can work through problems they may be facing. You can help us make a donation and support the cause by heading over to customoffsets.com and pick up a t-shirt or a hoodie or even something small like a bottle opener or a wallet and the likes like that. I almost forgot to tell you, by the way, every $5 you spend is going to get you an entry for a chance to win our freaking SEMA truck. That's right, we're giving it away, and it could be yours. It could be in your driveway before the end of the year. Check it out, customoffsets.com/giveaway. Now, one of the biggest things that we hear when it comes to lifting your truck is that you're going to ruin its functionality, and to be honest, I'm not really sure what that means. Well, yes, technically it is a little bit more difficult to toss stuff in the bed of the truck when it's lifted, like 2x4s or a lawnmower, for example, because I know we tried to do that. There's still plenty of function that can be had with a lifted pickup. In fact, I would argue that compared to a worn out stock suspension, your truck may even tow and haul better than it would have with the stock setup with that new lift kit. Here's what I mean. Lift kits by nature are made to increase the distance between the body of the truck and the wheels and tires, right? That's why it's called a lift kit, because it makes your truck bigger. That's how it works. In the case of a suspension lift kit, this happens by dropping the differential, putting in longer knuckles than the factory ones, and otherwise just beefing things up in both the front and rear of the truck. This of course means that in most cases you can't reuse your factory shocks. For this reason, most lift kits are going to come with new shocks, right? Now, while not all shocks are created equally, it is a safe bet to say that if you end up installing a quality shock like a King or a Fox, for example, it's going to ride better or handle the weight of the truck and anything you're gonna put in the bed or tow with a lot better than your worn out factory suspension. I know when we put the lift in my Duramax, we replaced those old, worn out, what I assume to be factory shocks with some sexy new Fox 2.0 Adventure Series shocks, and the ride change was immediate. Additionally, this new lift kit paired with the airlift helper bags that I installed in the rear have really helped me have the confidence in my truck to tow pretty much anything that I put behind it. Like, I don't know if you guys know, but we put over 6,000 miles on that truck this summer, just back and forth between truck and car shows, and every time I did it, I had a gooseneck trailer and at least one vehicle behind it. Heck, when I went with the guys over at Fitment Industries down to the Slammed Enough Gatlinburg show, we tossed Alex's Ferrari and his R8 on a 36-foot gooseneck trailer behind the truck, and it was freaking awesome. truck handled it fantastically and it looked super rolling down the road. One thing to keep in mind when it comes to lifting your truck is that while it technically isn't ruining your truck, is that once you lift it, it's much more difficult to go back to stock ride height. This is true for a couple reasons, but one of the biggest of them is that most lift kits require you to cut some portions of your truck to make clearance for the drop brackets and other lift kit parts. While sure, right, I suppose that you could get under there with a welder and a grinder and tack a piece in there and then weld it in and then grind it down and repaint it. It is significantly more difficult to do than most of us really want. You know what they say though, grinder and paint makes me the welder I ain't, so there's that. One thing you want to remember when it comes to lifting your truck is the rest of your vehicle's front end components. Now, Duramax guys, I'm looking at you. I know it because I am one, right? I know the struggle. Independent front suspension trucks, they're cool. They ride great. However, they do have the Achilles heel of those little baby tie rod ends. So, you know, unless you're beefing up that front end, I would maybe avoid those boosted launches, boys. And much like those guys, regardless of if you have an IFS truck or a solid front axle, the fact still remains that if you're going to lift your truck, you're also likely going to be putting some bigger and wider wheels and tires on. And while sure, 14 wides, they look fantastic. They do put additional stress on the front end of the vehicle though. Things like ball joints and tie rods and pitman arm and idler arms and wheel bearings are all going to be under additional stress here, meaning that if you're not prepared for what's going on and all the additional stress, it is going to shorten the length of the life on those components and could mean that you need to replace those sooner rather than later. Now, if this is something you're concerned with when you're installing your lift kit, it may be a great time to take a look at those parts and replace them if necessary. For example, when we built the LBZ, we went through the entire front end and replaced it with every kryptonite product that we could get our hands on. Now sure, it may be a little bit overkill, but I know no matter what or where I go, my front end is going to hold up to the abuse of towing on 14 wides, and I know that if I ever need to do a four-wheel drive boosted launch for, you know, science, that I could do it and not be too worried about it. Side note here, if this video gets 50,000 views in the first 7 days, I'm gonna do a boosted launch in the Duramax and we'll put it up on TikTok. It's a promise. Let's do it. Well, there is some truth to what your old dad said about the lifting your truck and its functionality. It is also important to remember that much like all things, it really just does depend on your particular situation. Do you guys have a lifted truck that you use for work? Have you ever towed with it? Let us know down in the comment section below, and as always, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. With that, I'm Dustin with Custom Offsets. We'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.